Hello out there in podcast land, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready, buckle up, buckle down, and buckle in. This is another episode of Hunting the Shadows. I want to welcome you all aboard tonight as we gather in the grotto here. It's a cold, dark winter night out there, but we got some warm hearts in the chat room. Absolutely. It's good for the Shadow Wolves to get back together again. Always is. And we're getting closer to the holidays here and to the darkest night of the year. Be very careful about that, my friends. They say that the spirits of the dead wander in the darkest night of the year, wanting to come into your house. So if anybody knocks at your door, be very careful who's on the other side, okay? Absolutely. Want to welcome everyone here. Hello, Kyle and Joanne and Melcina and Carol. Hello. We've got some slowly gathering in the grotto here. Definitely, we got a fantastic show ahead for you tonight. Absolutely. We're going to be talking about a very interesting subject, something that's going to affect all of us in the very near future, my dear friends. Absolutely. Hello, John. Good to have you here, man. Blue Eyed Bandit. We're going to be talking about the Antichrist, and you need to take notes on this tonight. Do so, because this is something that is going to ultimately affect you. Okay, it will do that sooner or later, and I think it's going to be sooner than later, my friends. Absolutely, we are definitely living in the days of Noah, without a doubt. The days of Noah have returned. Absolutely, and you know, people thought Noah was a fool. They thought Noah was a fool until it started raining. Okay, and we need to start paying attention to what's going on in this world, what the signs are, and the days that are closing in around us. And it's always good to do that. I have a very special guest with me tonight, but brother of mine. He really needs no introduction, but I'm gonna try to introduce him here in a minute. Uh, he and I have we have a long history together, and he and I like to talk shop and get together, and we always have some wonderful conversations when we do get together. And he's a very dear friend of mine, and I'm gonna bring him on now shortly here. Mr. William Nighthawk. All right, come on in the house, brother. How you doing tonight, brother? You raring to
Oh,
go?
yeah,
We'll hang in there
I'm
as long
ready
as
as
we
long as,
can. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
yeah, as
William's
long as
having a
AI
little
will let
bit
me.
having some technical difficulties, but we'll be all right, I think, maybe. And he's doing this on his phone there. He's got a AI problem or something going on with that computer problem. We're gonna try to solve that if we can, but we may have to get some outside help on it. Sounds like it's the AI problem. I'm gonna tell you, AI is screwing everything up, brother. AI is really doing the job, and
Well, you know,
I think it's just it hasn't even really got started good yet. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah, I
for
agree.
everyone out there
I
that doesn't
agree.
know this, fellas, this is Mr. William Nighthawk. He's a good friend of mine. Like I said, he is a legend, and he's very much like me. We both are deep into cultic knowledge and folklore and stuff like that. We've always had that a common interest together, and he was actually born into a family that his mother was a black witch. So he has known about the occult and that kind of knowledge and all that his whole life. So he has also had advised me on some things. I've advised him. We've always got together on this stuff, and because we've had a lot of experience in it. But I always say that whenever I get together with William, I learn something. I do. I'll pick up on something sooner or later, and that's hard for me to do. An old geezer like me, but I always learn a little
Yeah,
something. Definitely, but
I
um,
I always
we've
listen.
we've
I
had
always listen to everything you say
yeah,
here. So I always listen.
yeah. Well, we've had some interesting history together. Definitely, I used to be a co-host on his show for a long time, and we had some very interesting conversations and shows. Had a lot of good guests and all that, so we used to have a fun time. Definitely, but Actually, we've always been there backing each other up, and asking for advice or help or whatever it is. It's always good. It's always good to have somebody like William on your six. Definitely, what I say. And but tonight we're talking about something, William, that William and I have talked about a lot in the past, and that's of course the Antichrist. He is going to be a supernatural man. He's not going to be just a regular guy. Okay, with a little power. He's going to be something that this world has never seen before. And I want to tell you this, my friends, before we get into our discussion tonight, something we definitely need to consider, and that is, as Jesus talked about the days of Noah, which I said earlier, they're here. We're living Bible times here, folks. We are living biblical time, okay? And those days are here, and we are going to enter in right now shortly into the most supernatural time this world has ever known. Things are going to happen that we've never seen before. We may not live through it all to see it all, but we will see some of it, definitely. And it's coming upon us, and it's coming ever faster. Day by day, it's getting here quicker and quicker and quicker. And anybody knows that, we know. And I said this to somebody the other day, William, and I'm going to throw it to you here. But it's really weird. No matter who you talk to, no matter where you go, no matter what you say, some people will tell you, "Hey, something's coming. Something's going. It's going to happen. Something's about to take place." Everybody knows this. No matter
Yeah.
what religion they are, or what mindset they are, what political persuasion, whatever, everybody agrees on this. So we
Yeah.
know something's coming. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like it is here and now?
I
That
think
we're
I think that we I think that we are actually in the precusp of the times of the Antichrist. I think that the whole system that the Antichrist is using has been pretty much established already. And what I mean by a system, Dennis, is I mean the fact that the internet was put in and AI and the whole tech industry has fallen in behind the AI, and now they're making all these data centers. And what's to say also that, one of my theories that I think about continually with this whole Antichrist thing is, what if the seven-headed beast that comes out of the water is a representation of the internet and AI combining with the data centers? What if it's seven specific data centers around the world that seek to have all the information stored within them to seek the ruin of humanity? Because that's ultimately what the Antichrist's main agenda is going to be, is to seek the ruin and downfall of man out of jealousy.
That's true. And that thing that you're describing that comes out of the ocean, and we talked about that before, that symbolizes the world of politics, the world system that's moving, ever moving like the ocean does. And he is very much the equivalent of what the prophet Daniel saw, with the statue, the different bronze and the iron and all that. That's the equivalent of that John saw.
Well, that's
Absolutely.
interesting. That's interesting.
Mhm.
That's interesting that you say that too, because if you think about the way they described things back in ancient times, they described a lot of things as statues or certain carvings and stuff
Mhm.
of deities or whatnot, or people to represent something. But maybe, just maybe, they were looking at something that they could perceive as a statue, because that's the only terminology that they had at the time in their vocabulary to describe what they were seeing in their prophecies and their visions. And it always struck me as being, well, maybe they were talking about a robot, AI robot, when they talked about seeing statues and the downfall of man. You know, one thing I've always done and considered these last 10 years, getting really in depth into the the study of the end times and the Antichrist is I've always looked for patterns, for hidden patterns in everything.
Mm.
And believe me, everything has a pattern. Take for instance the angels' names, Raphael, Gabriel, even the word Israel. Okay, what do they all have in common? They have El in common. I did a search on the internet on IBMD site of all
And isn't that part of
of
the
all the
name of
people.
God as well? God's name was Elohim
Yes,
or something like that. Yeah, the El. Yeah. Mhm.
yes, Elohim, yes. And as a representation of that, um, it's one thing to take and just say, oh, it's a coincidence. But I came across over 12,000 names that have literally the EL in their name as L,
Mhm.
as in Elohim. Okay. And every one of those people were affiliated with the Hollywood industry and the music industry, all 12,000, some of them. Okay. Now,
Mhm.
I went down the list, and I'm not saying all of them could be, descendants of the Elohim, which they could be, but I went down the list of all 12,000 and some names, and I think I sent you all that information on Messenger earlier of the list of names. But I found out that the titles of the music and of the movies that they were working on were biblically related and evil related, darkness related. And it had that common dark theme throughout going through everybody's name. And I have all the names on my phone, by the way. I have a list saved on my phone. And I mean, some of the stuff that they were talking about was, the crucifixion, Rosemary's Baby, Damien movie, the movie Terminator, which is a big AI thing. The
A lot of
movie
prophetic,
Them.
stuff,
Yeah.
huh? Yeah. Just a moment here. You are from what? North Dakota or South Dakota? You're from South Dakota, right? Were you
Yeah,
originally
South.
from South Dakota? Okay, I was just answering a question somebody had about what state you're from there. Yeah, that's very true, William. And you know what? We've talked about this before. I think a lot of subliminal messaging is being put in these movies and stuff for a reason. There's a reason behind a lot of this stuff, and you and I both know that when it comes into secret occultic stuff, they use their own language of symbolism, and stuff like that going on with this. And
Eh,
and by the way, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Hebrew word El Shaddai means God is great or something like that. I think it's that's a L in there. There's a E L. That's God is what that stands.
Well,
And if it's used on the end of somebody's name, that means of God. Or associated with God.
Li. Yeah, it's pronounced L, but the word Li in Hebrew
Yeah.
means fallen angel. Literally, it translates to fallen angel. And in the certain sect of the Jewish faith that weren't part of Israel until after World War II, and the same Operation Paperclip brought those same people here to our country that were part of the German culture and German way of life during World War II. They were actually brought here because of from what I was informed of by my father, he came out of World War II with 5 Purple Hearts. Okay, 3 of them he earned right away out of World War II. He survived D-Day, and he survived the 4th Armored Division going through France and Germany. He did all kinds of secretive stuff with the 4th Armored Division with General Patton. And I remember one day as a child growing up that we sat at the kitchen table, and he told me, he goes, son, he goes, I really don't believe we won World War II. He says, I thought we actually declared it a draw and basically came to an understanding because of what we found at the North Pole and Antarctica. And you know, it's awful funny to me how he described some of the things that he observed while he was there. He got sent on certain tasks and duties because of his assignment and his history with the military and the army. And you know, he was always a you know, a hero to me, basically. But
I've always heard that. I've always heard that the war was brought to a conclusion politically and not militarily
exactly,
to that extent. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And you know, it all comes down to what they found, that the Nazi scientists and the Nazi researchers uncovered in the North Pole and in Antarctica. And I think they might have uncovered something that we've been dealing with since 1945, since the end of the war, and that is the fallen ones, the fallen angels. I think they have literally been working hand in hand with either the descendants of the fallen from 1945 and on. Because if you think about our history, you know, it's always been war after war after war after war. Then it went right into a so-called police action. Okay, and then when we started researching it more in certain recent years, it ended up having a 20-year war in Afghanistan and Iran territories because of that's the original area. Yeah, that's the original area. Yeah, exactly. So everything they do has a purpose. And my computer is just going crazy right now. It's got a mind of its own. It's got a mind of its own. Thank you, AI.
Been taken over by AI. Sounds like it's being taken over.
Just to make a long story short, though, I wanted to say that, you know, I always tell everybody to question everything, and I mean that, you know, and it's not because you're going to doubt your faith. Okay, I'm not saying doubt your faith. Faith is all we need. Faith and show no fear. That's specifically what Jesus Christ taught us. Okay, that's specifically what the Bible says: is to stand strong in your faith.
Over and over again. Over and over and over.
Yeah, I'll give you the strength and the courage to walk on scorpions. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, it doesn't.
You might remember,
but when you're dealing with a group of individuals that have
you might remember there's a passage in the book of Revelation,
manipulated humanity as a whole worldwide with certain influences. You know, you really got to mind your P's and Q's, because there's some people that have, and families that have been involved in this for a very long time
now. You might remember that passage in the book of Revelation. I think it's the book of Revelation. It says that men's hearts would fail them for fear. You know, their hearts are going to fall. They're going to fall to this fear. And fear is always the weapon that evil uses against mankind. You know, fear and intimidation, hatred and jealousy, all these different emotions they use against us. And, you know, evil is very good at that. You know, it knows how to manipulate that very well. And, you know, the one thing I think we need to look at, William, is that, you know, Satan and his fallen angels and all that, none of them are creators. They cannot create anything. They can only manipulate things, you know. But we've talked about this before, and a lot of people don't understand it. People were fooled years ago by believing in the gods of, you know, of Mount Olympus, and the gods of the Romans, and the gods of the Egyptians, and all these different gods that were actually, you know, fallen angels masquerading as gods to fool mankind into believing something that was not true. You know, that's the interesting thing. but we've lost William there. Maybe he'll be back shortly here. But the thing about that is that we've fallen, subject to that over the years, and that the fallen angels have a plan for this, and their plan is a simple one for mankind: corruption and destruction. You know, corruption and destruction. They will corrupt mankind and then destroy mankind. And let me put William back up here, and there we go. And that's been their plan all along, William. They follow their plan, and the plan is still going on. They got people believing in the Anunnaki and the gods of Egypt and the gods of, these were not real gods, folks. They were fallen angels masquerading as these things, fooling people and believing that. And William and I, we've talked about this before. The big lie that's coming is going to be the alien factor that they're going to use against us. That's the big lie that's coming.
There's something to be said about this. Yeah. Yeah, the whole Project Bluebeam, is going to be a big deception that they're going to play. It's going to be, it's pretty much their ultimate card to play.
They
coerce us into believing that there is outside influence.
They even joked about that and said that we can do things to make people think it's the second coming. With Project Bluebeam, that's what they even bragged on that. They could do that.
Yeah, I mean, even just
and that's
they brag about it all the time. In fact, if you take and you look,
that's a very interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because Jesus warned us. They're going to come to you and say he's here or he's there, or he's in a secret place, and he said, "Don't you believe him? Don't listen. It's going to be a conspiracy thing that they've got against us, and they're going to use that to try to get us to. It's going to be one of the biggest, greatest psyops that have ever been done. Don't you think so?
Yeah, guaranteed. Yeah, guaranteed. Guaranteed. I mean, just look at how bad they mess with me just by trying to talk about this stuff. And the fact that in our world today, since the inception of a certain three-letter agency, who I've already named, if you reverse the letters, it's literally it literally tells you something about the way the world was after the inception of this group of individuals,
artificial
which I believe was
control.
created in 1950. And it's the CIA, and if you take and you reverse those letters, you have AI. Okay, and you also have other things on top of that, and unfortunately I can't get into my files because they just locked me out of my computer completely. I've got my computer completely shut down. But the whole concept of the I'm not saying that the AI is going to physically be the Antichrist, but I believe that it is going to facilitate the character coming forward and declaring himself the Antichrist, whether it's human synthoid or whether it's strictly robotics or whether it's a full-fledged human being with a certain bloodline. That remains to be seen. But I can tell you right now that my suspicions are that of somebody from the tech industry is going to be coming forward. And, when you think about it, a certain individual that wants to find Mars so badly, his name pretty much eloquently states the Elohim, the fallen ones. So, and we all know who I'm talking about. That's Elon Musk. Okay. And it goes along with the concept of AI helping out. And maybe, just maybe, everybody's talking about how a certain tech individual could be the one to introduce the Antichrist. Well, maybe he is. And maybe we're just not comprehending what he's doing. There's much to be said about artificial intelligence. I think it's been around for a very long time. I think it's been used to deceive humanity for a very long time. And that's my own personal viewpoint. That's not my religious viewpoint, but that's just me personally. I feel like that's been hindering humanity's progress in the right direction and pulling us away from Christ, the real Christ, and God, the Father, and moving us in a direction of war all the time, and racial division and religious division, and all this other stuff on top of it. So when you think about it, we've been manipulated a very long time.
I think it's been with us in some form or another. We've talked about this before in some shows that we've done in the past about, the fallen angels giving us what I call shadow signs, celestial technology, giving us a rope to hang ourselves with. They don't give us this stuff because they love us. They want to corrupt us with this. They want to, their ultimate plan is to destroy. Corruption and destruction, as I said earlier. And I think without a doubt, AI has been with us in one form or another for a long time. But, and I'm going to ask you a question, see what you think about it. But here's the weird thing about it. I think, and I said this to somebody the other day, and I'm going to ask you what you think about it. Do you think possibly that AI may be the Antichrist? You know what I'm saying? It may be not just the man, and we know he's going to be a man, a supernatural man, but he's going to have a system, he's going to have a world. And look, that's the perfect vehicle. Don't you think so?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly, that if AI is not the Antichrist, it's going to be such a strong part of the Antichrist as an individual. And that's why I do believe that there is a link between a certain tech giant with this whole outcome. I really do. I think people are so engrossed into making the funny little AI videos, short videos and stuff, and how cute it is and stuff, but they're at the same time they're playing with AI. It states in the Bible, that we're not supposed to basically, well, the best way I can describe it is there was this pastor on the other day that I listened to, and I respect him a lot. And he talked about John 14:30, and it talks about how I will not talk with you much longer, for the prince, the evil ruler of this world, is coming. There's nothing in me that belongs to him. He has no power over me. And that was Jesus talking to his disciples, and he was literally telling them that just because you're taught to fear something, you don't have to. If you are talking about cryptids, and you're talking about ghost hunting, and you're talking about this, that, and the other thing, and you're taking pictures of the oddities happening and supernatural things happening in your home or around you or your family, you're literally coercing with that being. Okay, you're inviting the opportunity for that evil to come into you. Okay, and we all know what happens when you leave that door open for evil to come in. I've been there. I've dealt that evil face to face hundreds of times, literally hundreds of times, and
it's real. I mean, people don't understand what you're talking about. Although it's a spiritual thing, it's just as real as anything else in this universe. Yeah. And and talking about AI and all that, there's a lot of imagery involved in it. A lot of imagery, and the Bible talks about that. The image of the beast, that it would cause the image to talk and walk and say things. That sounds very much like AI to me. I mean, that was and I think, and I said this before when it first started coming out and people started talking about artificial intelligence. I said, I guarantee you without a doubt, just like everything else mankind has, William, it's already been compromised by the demonic. It's already been infected, because we have that nature. We got that dark nature in us. Everything we do has got a dark side to it. Just like, you can take a pill to help you, but it can do bad things to you as well. You got a dark side of all this stuff because what we're doing, when God creates, he creates things perfectly. They don't do that kind of stuff. But when we create or try to create, we make imperfection. But imperfection makes only imperfection. Perfection makes perfection. That's why God's holy. God is holy above all other things because he is perfect in all his ways. The Bible says that he is perfect in all his ways. That's what made Jesus the Son of God. He walked this world with no sin. You and I can't say that, William. We've sinned in our life. Everybody has. Except that man didn't sin. He was the prototype. He was the second Adam that did what he was supposed to do. He had a job, he had a mission, and he did it, for us. He didn't do it for himself. He didn't need to do it for himself. He was already God. I mean, he did it for us. But here's the interesting thing, and I want to see what you think about this. When it comes to image, we were made in the image of God. We were made in the image of God. And you got this AI talking about imagery all the time. You got the Antichrist image and all that stuff. And, look at the world around us today. Everything is about image, You don't buy a book by what's in it. You buy what the cover is on it, That's the way we do things. We see things, but we don't. Yeah, we go by the cover. We go by the cover of the image. Image is everything, especially in things like Hollywood, media, movies, and all this stuff. If you and I were movie stars tonight, we would be worried because we're getting older, and our image is what we sell. That's what we make our living on, okay? And when we start getting wrinkles or getting old and out of shape and all that, we would be worried because, hey, our job's going down the drain. That happens in Hollywood day after day. It's all about image, and that's what the Antichrist is going to be about. He's going to be a lot of imagery. Don't you think so?
Well, and if you also consider too this, he is using Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call him, Lucifer. I mean, he goes by many names. Whatever you want to call him, and his evil horde, the devil, the demons and stuff. Whatever you want to call them. They're also called archons and other Gnostic beliefs. But, they're also called Naga. Okay, they're also called several other different types of beings, reptilians. Mm-hmm. So, when you get into that whole concept,
they are reptilians.
It all comes. It all comes down.
Let me interrupt.
It all comes down to geographical differences.
Since you brought reptilians up, okay, I want to throw something at you here you might have not thought about. But there's a very specific passage in the book of Revelation. And remember this well. What comes out of the mouth of the Antichrist, the false prophet, and Satan? What comes out of the mouth? The evil spirit that looks like what? A frog. That's a reptile. Yes. That's a reptilian thing. Yeah, exactly. And somebody just said in the chat, AI is alien intelligence. It is in a way, but you got to forget about aliens with the big bug eyes and all that. The aliens we're concerned with tonight came out of heaven. They got thrown out of heaven. They don't belong on this planet. You and I do, William. We are the sons of Earth.
Yeah,
we belong here. They are not. They are aliens to this planet. They are the real aliens, folks, that we need to concern ourselves about.
Yeah, mm-hmm. there is a guy that I've been watching lately. He goes by Stephen. I can't remember his last name. I just started watching him, but he's Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle is his name. Look him up because he's got some very, very profound information that he talks about when he deals with AI and things like that. And you know, it's one thing to talk about reptilians and all that in that manner, but we also have to consider that there's so many hidden patterns out there that we just don't see. Look for certain colors. Red and blue is a big one. If you see a lot of red and blue, you got to ask yourself why you see a lot of red and blue. Research it. You'll be amazed when you find out. Okay. Certain letters and word patterns and number patterns. You know, a lot of people throw up these angelic numbers. You know, and it says right in the Bible not to mess with astrology and all that. You know, so because you're messing with something that is evil of Lucifer and of his type of hatred towards humanity, and how he's going to use those outside things that would interest the human curiosity trait into stepping away from God. Okay, and we've got to be careful about that. That's the thing. There's so much going on with humanity today to entice us. It's like living in a prison cell with the prison door open. You know, as long as you feed them the food that they like, give them the work that they can do, you know, give them a what they think is a decent pay, and then take away things from through taxes and all that, you're living a prison life, okay? But you don't realize it because the cell door is open. You literally are living within a prison. And as soon as you start to wake up, that's when they slam the cell door closed on you, and you can't get out. You know, and that's where we're at this point. That's where humanity's at this point. If humanity doesn't wake up and realize that these evil forces, the fallen angels, you know, the watchers, you know, they're all here right now in the same moment in time and place that we're in, making humanity fall even farther than the angels do. So, and that's their ultimate goal. That's their ultimate goal right there. They don't like humanity. They despise humanity, and they will do whatever it takes to get rid of humanity and get back into the grace of the Creator. You know, the one that created everything and created them. You know, that's why I don't fear the fallen angels. That's why I don't fear demons, because they're not of me. Okay?
There's that argument. You know, I've had people argue about that over time. You know, so God created evil too. He did not. Evil is the absence of God. Okay, He created Satan and these fallen angels just like He did all the rest of those things, and they were created holy, good, and just. They became what they wanted to become. They denied that. He did not create them evil. He did not create evil in this universe. That is something He did not do. Yeah, but you know, you're very right about that.
I agree.
In that thing, in that synopsis on that is the fact that, you know, you got the red pill and the blue pill, you know, that we talked about. Now that's just a movie. The Matrix is just a Hollywood movie, folks, but it is real in some ways because it's not a computer program, though. Although I think the spiritual dimension is tied directly in with mathematics. I think that is it's a very lifeblood to that extent. But the real Matrix is the system that we are slaves to. We are born as slaves into the system. We die as slaves in this system. And this system is owned by it too. God does not own that system. Jesus does not own that system. Satan owns that world system. And he will give it to his son, the Antichrist. Just like God gave... You know, God gave the earth to Jesus. Jesus is going to rule this planet one day. He's going to come back, and he's going to rule. But God gives him this planet. He gives him earth. Satan is giving the Antichrist the earth because he stole it. He stole it from God. God's going to get it back one day. Okay, that's why Jesus called him a liar, a thief, and a murderer. That's what he is. He's a loser, folks. He's a big loser. And he don't realize he is. Here's the weird thing, William. I told this to somebody the other day. He just believes his own lies. I think he is the pathetic, psychotic liar. Okay, he believes it online. He still thinks he's going to win this war, and the war's still
And
going on with him. You and I, we know that. We've seen this. We know without a doubt that war never stopped yet, and that's why we fight the
Exactly.
battles. That's why they are so strongly attacking us spiritually. Because this is a spiritual war, my friends. It's going to become a physical war. It already is.
Yep.
But it's also a spiritual war.
Yep.
And that's what we got to watch out for.
The one thing that when Christ walked this earth and he preached his beliefs of the Father, the true God of this world, to the masses, was he was teaching unconditional love, because unconditional love is the most powerful force in the universe, okay, in all of God's creation. And that is why I've always said that, you know, when humanity deals with things, they've got to stop using this brain up here. Okay, this brain is nothing but garbage. Okay, it's nothing but a computer system that basically translates what your eyes are seeing from your past experiences. Okay, so that being said, use your first brain, your heart, because it says in the book of Enoch also that your heart is your first brain. Okay, literally. And you know, it's amazing. It's amazing that people don't use their heart more than their brain anymore. And you know, when you know, we all get mad, we all get frustrated, we all say things and do things out of anger, out of frustration. But you know, if we are to be truly human, okay, and truly children of God, aren't we supposed to love unconditionally and forgive people for their transgressions? Aren't we supposed to take in consideration that humanity flawed after the Garden of Eden, you know, and became, you know, unlike the original creation was meant to be? So, you know, those are all things, yes, those are generations and thousands of generations down separated from us. But that transgression and that sin has carried over generation. And until humanity wakes up as a whole and says, wait a minute, you know, why are we fighting each other? Why are we killing each other? Why, you know, why are we, you know, exposing, you know, other countries, you know, and taking over other countries because of the minerals in their ground? Why are we, you know, fighting over oil? Why are we looking for the Anunnaki grave sites and King Gilgamesh's grave sites in Afghanistan and Iran? You know, that's the whole reason for that war. They wanted to find what I call the Nephilim virus, and that Nephilim virus is real. It's what people are experiencing because they're feeling all this aggression and frustration at this time, and that's what the nefarious forces of evil want. You know, it's whatever you want to call them. If you want to call them Satan, if you want to call them the devil, if you want to call them Lucifer, you know, if you want to call them the fallen angels, the reptilians, whatever you want to call them, it's all the same thing. Just like they stated in the biblical times, they tried to describe something to us. There was multiple names for one type of a thing, a situation or a being, okay? Because in different geographical regions, they're going to describe something a little bit different or give it a different name, okay? And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with something that has multiple names, multiple identities, and multiple levels of evil. And until we realize that this evil comes from within, which means that certain parts of humanity has been sucked in to this evil process, and now they're being influenced and being controlled by this evil, which, you know, it could be AI. We all know that AI can make up fake videos very, very well. Very well. So, I don't, you know, that's just.
And you know, William, you and I, we've both seen people like that on social media. All they want to do is post their own pictures on the media. You know, it's an ego trip for them. I think sometimes all you ever see them do is they posting their own pictures of themselves doing something and all that. It's a big image thing. It's an ego thing. And Satan, Lucifer, whatever name you want to give him, he always appeals to that part of us because that is the darker side of us. And the darkness of this world is always looking to hook up with the darkness in us. That's why I say we got to keep that animal in us under control. If we don't,
exactly.
We have some bad problems. You see that happening in the world around you right now. Look at the hatred that is taking over this world, folks. It's blown up like a bomb. I have never seen hatred, jealousy, and division like we have it right now because this is evil. And by the way, the true name of Satan is supposed to be Samael. Samael. That's supposed to be his real name.
Yeah.
When he was an angel, he lost that. He lost his name when he fell with everything else. But we give him different names. But it's got that L on it again there, and it's got L on the end of it because he was associated with God. By the way, Satan, he, we talked about this before, William. He was the covering cherubim. He was God's bodyguard, folks.
Yeah.
That's how close he was to God. He stood behind the throne of God and guarded God.
He
fell further than any of the other angels fell.
Well, here's one thing to consider too, Dennis.
Okay.
Here's one thing. Okay. Here's one thing to consider, Dennis, too. When you look at history as a whole, do you know that there was 200 angels fell originally, okay? And did you know that there is 190 known craters throughout the entire world, okay? And that's not even disclosing what is in the oceans. That's only on the land, that there's 190 craters, okay, throughout the entire world. How many fallen angels were there? 200.
Well, there is a contention about that, William. Let me say this, and I'm going to see what you think about it, okay? They say that the 200 may have been supervisors over a lot of the others. They may have been higher up, sort of like princes, and they became princes of hell, supposedly, when they fell. But there may have been more fallen angels than that, but that's just the main 200 that were the main. And these are the ones that cooperate with Satan to corrupt mankind. That's by having sex with human women, by having sex with animals, and messing around. That's where you get a lot of these cryptids, folks. And that is why the Bible specifically says in the end days, and that's what we're living in. You women and I, we know that. These animals, these beasts are going to turn against you. Nature is going to turn against us. People's dogs and cats are going to attack you. The animals in the wild are going to attack you. Cryptids may come after you. I mean, this is the revolt. This is the curse that is fulfilling on this planet right now.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And the one thing that I've always said is when you're dealing with the cryptid community, you're dealing with something that not all the times is going to be as your eyes perceive them. Because dealing with what I did in the past, I know for a fact that when you're dealing with, in my culture, we call them trickster spirits. In your culture, you call them demons. They're pretty much a horse apiece. Okay, trickster spirits, they can possess you. Okay, you have the Big W, the Wendigo. You have the Skinwalkers. I've done the Skinwalker ceremony several times.
You and I know, and I've talked about this at this show. Okay, and I want to touch base with you on this since you brought that up. There are what we call dream witches. They can actually project themselves into the bodies of animals. They can project themselves in the bodies of people. They can project themselves into objects. These dream witches become dream, okay? And they can possess animals. They don't need to turn into an animal. They can possess an animal. And, I remember, I'll never forget one time, I come up on a wolf in the wild, And I said, and I agree with everything you saying. I said to myself, is this really a wolf that I'm seeing? You got to ask yourself that question a lot, just like you say, question everything. You got to question things that you see as well, because everything in this world is not what it appears
Exactly.
to be for a reason. And the demonic can do that. I have
Exactly.
seen them
And you
do
know,
that. They can look like anything they want to.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. One of the things one of the things that I was taught growing up, by my father, who was not into the dark arts, by the way. He was a very noble man, a very honorable man, but he was hardly home because he was
Hmm. I think he froze up there on us, William. Oh man, there you go. Okay, I think you're back
hopefully you
now.
all can hear me.
Okay, okay, I got you. You're back.
Anyways, as I was saying, one thing. Okay, one thing. Hopefully, the one thing that I can continue to say without being cut down or shut off by AI is that, do your research. If you learn anything from tonight, do your research, because there's certain
Mhm,
sects of humanity that are working in conjunctions with AI
mhm,
and tech giants and what we call the cabal or the shadow government to bring forth this mock alien invasion thing to scare humanity together to pretty much control us as a mass and make us afraid. But you have to remember that the Bible specifically says, "Do not fear." They
yep.
control us by their fear. If you stand strong in your faith and you show no fear and you say, "Devil, you have no part of me. You are not within me. You have nothing to do with me. And I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ." That should be it. Okay? And walk away, because you are a divine child of God, okay, the Creator. And until humanity realizes that they have that divine spark deep within them, in their soul, and that's what these beings want, is that divine spark, so they can get that divinity back to go back up to heaven. If you think about it, that's why they hate humanity. So it's
And you know, I had
it's a
a preacher
nightmare,
told me
yes.
that one time years ago, William. He said, fear is the foot of the
Yeah,
devil that sticks in your door to keep it from closing. And that's very true. They use fear as a weapon. Don't fall
yeah,
for that trick. You and I both, we have confronted evil spirits. We know how they try to psych you out and play that mind game with you, try to get you scared, try to get you worried, try to do that. That's the way they operate. And that's why you and I both have warned people, don't play with these things. Don't mess around with them.
no,
Don't try to
don't
get the
even,
lottery number from them. Okay, this is not going to work out
yeah,
well because
don't, yeah,
they're not they're not there to help you in any way possible. They are there to hurt you.
exactly.
They're there to hurt you,
The worst
and
thing,
they're going to mislead you.
yeah, the worst,
Yeah,
yeah, the worst
absolutely.
thing that humanity can do right now is basically carry on, about things that are unseen, about cryptids and stuff like that. And the worst thing that they can do is put more faith in the fact that those cryptids exist, when the Bible tells you fact for fact, and even Sumerian culture tells you in the Sumerian text that those creatures exist. You have world maps like the Piri Reis map, showing that these cryptids exist. Okay, whatever you want to call them, cryptids, demons, it doesn't matter. Um, Nephilim, bloodlines, doesn't matter. But they exist. Okay, but you have to remember, as soon as you're using your brain and you're admitting that these things exist, you're giving Satan the opportunity to sneak into your life and affect your life as a whole. And you don't want that. You make sure that door is slammed closed. and never, don't worry about that kind of stuff, because you know what? When it comes down to it, I would rather die than live in a world that is controlled by evil and cryptids and stuff like that, and coerced into living in fear my whole life. Because I'm not going to show fear. I refuse to show fear. I don't fear a human.
That's the
I don't
last
fear
thing
an
you want
animal.
to do.
I don't fear a demon. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I refuse to, because they have no part of me. They are not in me. They didn't create me. So why should I fear?
And you know that's
That's
what
just
I
me.
tell people, William. You and I both have talked about this before in the past. You and I have done tons of shows together. We've covered this ground a lot before, but it's always good to cover it again. But if you get scared, use it. Use it. Use that fear to motivate you. Use that fear the right way. Don't let it use you. That's what fear is all about. Fear uses you. You need to use the fear and make it work for
Yep.
you. Okay, that's the way
Yep.
you got to deal with it. Yeah, and you know
Turn,
another thing
turn.
that we've looked at in the past with these things is the fact that there are, I guarantee you, and you know what I'm about to say, there are other dimensions on this planet. Just what we see is just what we see. You said this so many times before in the past. We only see so much. We only hear so much. We only perceive just so much, very little bit of what goes on around us. There are spiritual dimensions here, folks, things hidden from us that we can't see. I think without a doubt, like that movie Constantine, hell may be right here with us. We just can't see it.
Yeah, very well.
Heaven may be very close to us. And the Garden of Eden is still there, but you can't see it. It's hid from you. And God being the God, the master creator of everything in this world, in this universe, he is master of these dimensions. He is master of them.
Exactly.
And he can close them. And you know, these things are mentioned in the book of Revelation. Look at the bottomless pit. That's a dimension, folks. That couldn't be anything else but another dimension.
Well, here's something to consider too, though, Dennis. Here's something to consider too. I've done a lot of research and investigating on portals and gateways through all the missing apocrypha and stuff, especially the Book of Enoch, where Enoch describes seeing 3 gateways. He sees 3 gateways in each cardinal direction. Okay. 3 in the north, 3 in the south, 3 in the east, and 3 in the west. I've already located one of the gateways in the west. I've located one of the gateways in the east, and I'm still looking for the others. But a lot of those gateways and portals that are mentioned in the Book of Enoch and other missing apocrypha, and even in the Bible, talk about certain locations. And one of them in the east is the Bermuda Triangle. It's literally the Bermuda Triangle. It's a gateway. Okay. The other one on the west coast is the one over Utah. And a gateway is different from a portal, everybody, because these things exist. Okay, portals are what you can walk into. If you're walking by yourself and things.
I think the gateway is more permanent, William, than the portal is. Yeah. Portals may move. You know what I'm saying? Gateways may not. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Portals definitely move. They're smaller, but yet gateways stay in one position, all the time. Right. The gateway that I'm talking about that I discovered in Utah goes all the way down and extends down to the Grand Canyon. Well, what have we found out that's been in Utah and the Grand Canyon recently? But they found Egyptian artifacts. Mm-hmm. So, that kind of correlates with, the reference to the Book of Enoch in the Bible. Yeah.
He's supposed to found the Hall of Giants. Yeah.
Well, you got Lovelock Cave too in that area. You've got other parts of Utah and rock formations. You can literally see stairways.
Look, William, think about you and I have always been interested in the folklore of cultures, different cultures. That includes Native American, European, all these different cultures. They all talk about, a lot of them mention what we would call gates to hell, or fiery gates,
Yep.
or gates of light, they call them over there. And they're mentioned in different places. And here's the weird thing about it. Most every time they're mentioned, guess where they're at? And I'm glad you brought that up. They're around cave systems.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know,
In
but
fact,
notice that most of them are mentioned around cave systems. Yeah.
yeah. There's one theory that I'm actually working on right now, and it has to do with Admiral Byrd. Um, I believe Admiral Byrd experienced something in the North Pole, and it's just amazing to me how we are not allowed in the South Pole, and we're not allowed in certain areas of the North Pole. In fact, the map and satellite imaging um, blocks out a certain part of the North Pole to where it can't be seen. And I believe Admiral Byrd flew into something in the North Pole back in, I think it was
Mm-hmm.
1946 or something like that.
Well, whatever
But
they found was covered up
I don't.
very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. What I believe is I don't believe that it was a portal to an underground world. Okay, to an alien
It
base.
could have
I
been.
don't
I think.
feed
I
into
think,
it.
and there's been so many stories over the years, William. And let me ask you this question: that there possibly was an opening there to the middle earth or the center of the earth. The opening was supposedly found by Byrd, and there was like covered in pollen, and there should not have been any pollen there. You know what I'm saying? This kind of blew out
I
of the
think
earth itself. You hear about that? You remember that?
I yeah. I think what Admiral Byrd flew into was one of the gateways, and I think that gateway went right straight to hell.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And
So and
he was lucky enough to
there's
come back. Some people that go into these gateways may not find their way back. You know, that's why I believe you
well,
get a
here's
lot of
another
missing people. A lot of missing
yeah,
people in
here's
the
another
national forest and things like that. They go missing. I'm not saying all of them do, but I'm saying a lot of them. And we've heard stories of people walking into these portals, gateways, whatever you want to call them, and they don't come back because when you once you walk into another dimension, you're in a whole different ball game altogether. It's just like you going from the land to the ocean. You're in a different world. You're in a different dimension. You might say that the land is a different dimension than the ocean is a different dimension.
yeah,
And these things
yeah,
may, and if you ever walk into one of these things, William, you may not find your way back out that easy.
yeah. There was a tribe of people, indigenous people, that stood 8 to 9 feet tall that lived above the Yukon area into Alaska, and they were literally called in their native language. Um, they were described as guardians of the gateway to the netherrealm, to hell,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And they were from the Nahanni Valley area, but I believe that they actually migrated down from the North Pole area. There's also you know as well as I do, you did a show on it recently, that there's a sect of dogmen people that are attached to the Inuit culture, that literally were cannibalistic and used to attack the Inuit people. So why would you have these things in the very cold area climate surviving and thriving if there wasn't an entrance to some other realm, which could have been literally the entrance to hell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a possibility. And look how that keeps cropping up. Like we said, in all these different cultures, from ancient Greece to the indigenous cultures here in this country in South America. This keeps popping up time after time. And the interest to the underworld, to hell or Hades, whatever name you want to give it. They talk about these entrances, and that's another thing that keeps popping up, all the time, just like we talked about other things. And I mentioned this the other day, William, and I think you'll agree with it. I think that the time before the flood, and like I said about Noah, everybody thought Noah was a fool until it started raining. Okay, don't forget that,
Yep.
folks. Everybody thought Noah had lost it till it started raining. Well, let me say this. That was a whole different world, I believe, than what we are living in now. Because if you look back at what went on, everything was bigger. The trees were bigger. The plants were bigger. Mosquitoes were the size of eagles. Adam and
Yep.
Eve may have been 9 or 10 feet tall for all we know. Okay?
Yep.
I mean, it's not that far fetched because science backs up what I'm saying here. Everything in the antediluvian age was bigger.
Yep.
We lost
Yeah,
that
'cause
as
they
time
also-
went on. We began to lose that. And that's why the Bible talks about this race of giants. You know, after the flood, not before the flood now. After the flood, there were giants. Okay? You got to explain that. And there's, you know, how did that happen?
I think we have been lied to about history. And, you know, this is why they don't like me talking about it, because every time I do, they try to shut me down. And I think that if you really researched it and you looked at the geographical regions of the world, and you look at mesas and you look at certain, you'll see giant ancient tree stumps, and which would account for the oxygen level needing to be over 30% in order to sustain giants. Okay, so if you look at the world as a whole with an open mind, and you see these things, and you say, well, you know, that looks like a tree stump. You know,
and guess
Devil's
what,
Tower is
William?
a perfectly good example.
The more inundated you are with oxygen, the longer you live.
Exactly.
And that was what was going on with those long lives. Okay, you know, like Methuselah was 800 some years old and all this. They had more oxygen-rich atmosphere to live in than we do. And it makes sense when you think about it, because as time goes on, this is slowly dissipating. The earth is changing. And that's what the Bible says about the end times, folks. The world will be like a woman about to give birth. And what happens when a woman's getting ready to give birth? She starts heating up. She starts shaking. She starts trembling. That's what the earth's going to do, folks, because the earth is about to give birth to a new age.
Yeah,
it's coming.
I'm gonna say something. I don't want to offend anybody in your audience. Okay, so you know, please bear with me. These are all just suffering from cancers so much and going through so much radiation and stuff. You tend to look at things differently. Okay, and I'm technically not even supposed to be breathing. Okay, so when I talk, I talk from vast experience of going through things. Okay, and I look at things a lot more differently than I did pre-diagnosis to have 6 months to live. So that being said, when I look at something, I've always developed a way of like perceiving it as like sitting around in a circle with a bunch of people. Say you got 20 people sitting in a circle, and you place an object in the center of the circle in front of them. Okay, whatever it is, a rock, a statue, an arrow, you know, anything, a bucket. You know, each one of those people within that circle are going to perceive that object in a different way. Okay, that's the way I look at things now. I look at things in every position of that circle. Okay, so when I see something that looks like a giant snake head, I question it. Is it a you know, a prehistoric, you know, remnant of the way the world was back in the days of giants? You know, indigenous cultures around the world talk about giants. In South America, they say giants come from the celestial beings from the stars down to the land and transform into a giant. And they ask things of people, and if those people don't grant them things, they do horrible things to those people. Okay, those are literally, you know, the guardians of the heaven, the second and third heaven. Okay, those are the cherubs and the seraphim, you know, that are there.
Different principalities of angels. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you don't give them something in this South American indigenous culture, you know, they do horrific things to you. People end up being unalive, missing, you know, awful things happen. Okay. So, you know, if you have legends like that and interaction in today's standards of actual reality, if we can call it that, you're dealing with forces that we really can't perceive, but they do exist at the same place in the same time that you are here. It's a given, okay? And the Bible tells you literally what these beings are and how to handle it. But nobody wants to look at the biblical aspect and even the missing apocrypha to combat this. I think the Anasazi, the people that were missing in the Southwest. I have a theory that they were not only called the Ant people, but they were Naga, just like the Naga of India, okay, which could correlate to the reptilian beings, the reptilian bloodline. Okay, where did the Anasazi go to? Okay, there was thousands of them, and they just all of a sudden disappeared.
Oh yeah.
And that name alone meant violent enemy to the other.
Well, if you go back and look at some of these, William, if you look at some of these bloodlines, and I've studied this deep, you and I both have done a lot of deep research into this, okay? And let me say this about these cursed bloodlines. I had a lot of people come to me worried about it. Oh, God, have I got this blood? Have I got that blood? Am I kin to the Bilderbergs or whatever, people worry about this. And rightly so, it is something I think, they would disturb you to know. But it doesn't, just because you got a bad bloodline doesn't mean that you can embrace that,
Exactly.
you can.
Everybody's
you can
given the
be good and not have a bad bloodline, folks. But what William's talking about here, and once upon a time, these families bragged that they were direct descendants of Jesus Christ. Remember that? Well, really, who they really are descended from are fallen angels. That's what, and they wanted to cover that up for political purposes. Okay, that's just what this bad blood is all about, and that's why it's so important in the Bible. When you read the Bible, and I advise people to read it straight through like a book. Don't just pick out one thing here and read it straight through several times. You'll get a better perspective on it. That what these men were writing through the filter of what they could see. You understand at that time. But you got to remember this: it's a genealogical book. Why is it a genealogical book? It's proving who Jesus is all the way back to Adam, because he was a what, William? Pure bloodline. Jesus could not be born of an imperfect, bad bloodline. He had to be born of a pure bloodline to break the curse. That's what it was all about. And a lot of people don't understand this. Jesus did not just go to the cross for your sins and die. Well, that's part of it, because he was a sacrifice. But he went to get you. No, he didn't need it. He needed us to get us authority. Because what did he promise? He said, I'm going back to the Father, and what I have done, you will do greater. You will heal people. You will cast out demons in my name. And by the way, I'm gonna blow your mind with this. Think about this a minute, William. You know what I'm talking about, though. William knows what I'm talking about. Disease is directly connected to demons. The disease like cancer and heart disease and other mental disease is all connected to the demonic. The Bible tells you that. When Jesus healed somebody, what did he do to them? He cast the demon out of them. That demon of sickness that was in them. A lot of this is connected to the demonic. God does not want us to be sick. God does not want us to have diseases. He did not make us to be that way. This is a corruption of us by sin and evil in this world. We got to understand that, And you know what? Remember what Jesus would tell somebody that you heal now. Go your way and what? Sin no more. Don't do that anymore.
Yep.
Change, because your sin brings us upon you something. Whether you actually sinning or not, or you just born in a bad bloodline. We're not born in the bloodline of Jesus was, okay? Because he was born in a pure line. That's why the Jews didn't want to mix with anybody else. They wanted to keep themselves. God said, keep yourselves pure from the rest of these Gentile guys, because they've got what? Bad blood.
Yep.
So I had a lot of people come up and say, oh, am I got this? I'm kin to this family, I'm kin to that family. I say, look, if you Gentile, you got bad blood. That's just it. You know, if you're not a Jew, if you're not Jewish, 100% Jewish, you got bad blood. That's it.
When I say to look for certain patterns and hidden symbols and stuff, and hidden words, color patterns, number patterns, and all that, and word patterns, just look at the Zionist word Shabbat. Okay, CHABAT, and you know, I often look at that and I think, well, are they saying chatbot? Which is a very close representation of that word. And if they're talking chatbot, they're talking AI. Now, AI could be interpreted as Antichrist. Okay, so you know, it's you know, it's all the way when you see the patterns and you try to figure them out. You know, and the patterns are there. They're there because forces that want us to realize that things aren't as they seem to be, that want to wake humanity up, to make humanity, bring humanity back to where it should be, are trying to help us along. And you know, certain things you're going to see, certain movies are going to play a role in it, certain music is going to play a role in it, certain way words are spelled and perceived, descriptionary things, colors, you know, the blue and the red, like I talked about. So many different things can play a role in it. But the one thing you have to do, even if you stand strong in your faith and you fear nothing, is you have to question everything, because we have been lied to about our history. Okay, and we need to find out the truth. So,
that's very true.
You know, evil is going to be evil. Evil's going to, and what do birds of a feather do? They flock together. Okay, and that's what evil does. Evil's going to seek out evil. If it senses that evil is of you, then evil can be in you. Okay, and a lot of people can't comprehend that. And you see a lot of addiction problems is what they go for. And what's one of the biggest problems humanity has now? Addiction. You know, so it's like, you know, addiction to illegal drugs, addiction to pornography, addiction to alcohol. You know, these are all tools that Satan and his minion are going to use against humanity. Okay, even there's several other people out there that talk about this stuff. It's not just us, you know, but there's not enough. And until humanity wakes up and questions everything, it's going to be a vicious cycle over and over again, and we're not going to escape it until Christ comes back. So, and you know, God forbid, because if you're not of him, you won't be with him. Plain and simple.
Right. That's very true, William. You know, I've always said that in my lectures. Pay attention to the patterns. They will teach you what you need to know. You know, if you pay attention to that, and William, being an expert researcher as he is, he knows that well. And that's what we look for. Those are the clues that point you to the way you need to go with things. And by the way, they're having a discussion about women having babies in the chat room. I'll tell you why women have babies. Because God gave the job to who he knows could do it. Okay, the men couldn't do it. The men weren't strong enough to do it. He gave that job to the women; they could get it done. Okay, that's why they have babies. But anyway, Absolutely. And but yeah, this is us just fascinating. We just scratched the surface tonight, just barely on this stuff. And my hope is one day that you and I both could live long enough, William. We might collaborate on a book on something like this. If we ever get a chance to do it, it would be neat to really get something like this in between the covers of a book. But
Yeah.
um, it would be neat. But I don't know if we'll ever live long enough to do that. But anyway, that would be neat to do that. But people need to understand that the Bible being written is the way it was, and I go with the King James version. It's the one closest to anything. In my investigation, I go with that. But we got to remember it was written spiritually. It must be read spiritually. You got to ask God to open that book for you. You can open it with your hands, but you got to open your mind for it. And if you ask God to open your mind, He will do that. Because it's very important we remember what God has promised us. He said that you have not been given a spirit of fear, but a spirit
Exactly.
of power and love
Exactly.
and a sound mind. And that's
Yep.
what God is
Exactly.
waiting to give you if you just ask Him. He will give you these things. But we got to remember, too, that men, when they wrote this stuff years ago, they were seeing stuff through the filter of their own eyes. They couldn't understand the world that you and I are living in now. But they tried
Right.
to get as close to as they could, but it was through the filter of what they were seeing. And you got to understand that, too, when you read a book like that, any kind of book, this history that goes way back like that. You gotta understand the people that wrote it and what they were seeing and what they were living. You know, that's the way it goes with any writer. Great writers can touch you over centuries. That you'll never meet them, but they can still touch you. That's amazing to me. That's the written word, and that's what God. And here's the interesting thing. I was telling somebody this the other day, William. They actually found the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were an earlier Bible than anything we had. And guess what? It absolutely fell in line with what we already had. It backed up what was there. It was another copy showing that was what we had was the authentic Word of God. It wasn't changed. It wasn't messed up. It wasn't just partially there. It fell in complete line in accordance with it. And that's the wonderful thing about it. God preserved His Word against all things, and we can take it for what it says. We can understand that's what it is. But there's so many things in this world, and it depends on how we look at it. But we need to ask God to give us that discernment. William, that's what we talk about a lot. We need discernment against all the lies and falsehoods and misinformation that's out there being put on. And like I said this on a podcast this morning I did with my good friend Jawinski. We did a great podcast. I'm going to have it out pretty soon. But I said this: Satan, the devil, whoever, whatever name you want to give, he's coming after your children first. He's indoctrinating these children. He's trying to take their minds. He's trying to get your mind too. He's trying to change our mind. That's why we need a sound mind. We need the mind that God gives us against these things. Because if we don't, we will fall. We will fall with him. These guys have already fallen. They're on the way out. I said they're a bunch of losers. Okay. They lost big time. We don't want to join them. We don't want to be losers with them. We want to be winners. We don't want to be losers. But they want to take us with them. They're already falling. They want us to fall with them. That's their main goal.
There was a pastor that I listened to a while back, and he said that he went to the Louvre Museum in France, the Louvre, and he was looking at a picture of the devil playing chess with a man, and he said that everybody interpreted that picture of a man with his head down, looking sad and lost, because he didn't have the last move, and he was a chess champion too. And when he looked at the painting, he said, "Wait a minute, he's got one more move." So he went around. The tour guide came back after he noticed he was missing, and said, "What are you looking at?" He goes, "Well, I'm just studying this painting." And, you know, I'm a chess champion, and I can tell you for a fact that he's not beaten by the devil. He's got one more move. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what God does. God does that for us. There's always
The king's
one
always got
more
one more
move.
move.
Exactly. And we always have one more move. He always has something else for us to
Well, you
do
know,
to
God has
avoid
promised us
certain
that way, no
situations.
matter what comes upon us, and all that. He has promised us a way out. There's always a, and I've said this before about Satan. He gives you the rope to hang yourself. He takes your hope and gives you the rope. That's what he does. Okay, God doesn't do that. God gives you a way out if you'll only look for
Yeah.
it. But Satan wants to put you in a place where there's no more hope. It's all over for me. I'm doomed. This is it. That's where he wants to get you because he knows he'd work on you better that way and get you to, hang your own self. That's the way he works. He's a coward. He's not going to come out and do it himself. He's a coward.
Well,
But
I got to get going.
that's what we got to
I
watch
got to
out
get
for.
going.
Yeah.
I hate to end this, but we'll do this again sometime. But I'm having so much problems technically wise, and it's always
Yeah, man,
because
we
of
better get you straightened out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We talked about this AI and the Antichrist thing and the internet and all that, and it just seems like it affects all my equipment, including my phone tonight. You all have seen it's
Well, there are
kicked me
certain
out quite a
subjects
bit.
they don't like, William. They definitely
But
they don't like us at all.
the the one thing I can truly tell everybody in your audience, and I wish I could see the comments, but I can't. Being on my phone, my screen's like that big. Is just use your what the gifts that God gave. Use the gift of discernment, like Dennis was saying. Use that. Okay. That's why we have been given these physical senses and these supernatural instincts called, um, you know, like when you have some deja vu happen. Okay, those supernatural instincts are gifts from God, and the more you use that to see the truth that's before you, the better you're going to be. Okay, and take it from somebody who's been on the dark side of things for a very long time. Okay, God does not want you at that dark place. Okay, he doesn't want you there. He wants you with Him. And the sooner humanity realizes that chasing monsters and shadows and voices is an enticement, and the closer I get to death, the more clear that is to me that I see. And I just want everybody to realize that. They question everything. Don't believe what your eyes are telling you, and use your first heart. Don't use your brain. Use your heart. Use your brain, your original brain, the way it was meant to be, which is your heart. Okay, use that. Don't use your eyes and your brain. And just breathe. Take life as it comes and breathe, and you'll always find a way. So that I gotta go. So I want to thank you, Dennis, very much for bringing me on, and thank you everybody in the chat. I wish I could see you and talk to you, but I can't. I got some issues here to take care of with the technical equipment, and might even not be able to do my show tonight. So.
Well, I appreciate you coming on tonight,
Thank
William.
you, Dennis.
It's always a pleasure when you and I get together. No doubt about that. And I always like to pick your mind and see what you think about things and all. And it's always a pleasure.
God
Definitely.
bless everybody.
I appreciate you very much,
God
brother.
bless, brother.
I love you very, very much. Respect and love to you, my friend. And I hope you get your problem solved there. And I hope you have. If I don't, see you before then, if you need any help, let me know, okay? And we'll try to find out a solution for it. Send me some screen captures, and we'll see if we can find somebody else having the same problem, okay? That always helps, maybe.
Okay.
But anyway, I appreciate you coming on here and getting with me tonight. And like I said, it's always always good to hear what you think about these things and all that. And I appreciate all that you've done for me in the past. Definitely, you've been a great friend to me in my life, and I appreciate that. I want you to know that, and uh,
And
I
we will
appreciate everything
continue.
you've
We
ever
will
done.
continue. That's a given. It'll continue, and we're giving a lot of challenges in our life, everybody. And just because you start out in a dark place means you got to end up there. Remember that. Take care, everybody.
Yeah. Okay. You take care of yourself, brother. I will be getting with you soon. Okay. And thank you for being on here tonight. Great show. Take care, and let me know if I can help you in any way. Okay. Take care. That's a great fellow, Mr. William Nighthawk. Absolutely, brother of mine, definitely. And we go way back. But that's a very interesting discussion. You know, folks, um, we all stand on the edge of eternity. You know, in one way or another. Hopefully, eternity won't get here too quick for us. But we all do stand on the edge of eternity, and we got to understand that in this world, and that everything we do see and things that we experience may be different than what we think they are. So, and like William says, you have to question everything, and ask questions. Ask the questions. Ask the hard questions, not the easy ones. You got to ask the hard questions, and look for the answers to it. Definitely. But I see we got a lot of new faces in here tonight, and some people that have been coming in. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Go over there and subscribe. It's free. It will make me happy. Okay. If I get some more subscriptions, I promise I will sing you all a Christmas song pretty soon. How's that sound? Okay. I will actually sing you a Christmas song. That may not be a treat. Okay. It may be worse than something like that. But anyway, I appreciate you all for being here tonight so very much. I appreciate your support, and I love you all very much. You know that, and I appreciate us when we all get together. It's so good that we can get together and talk about this and be one with each other. That's great. It's family. We are all shadow wolves in our hearts. Okay, that's what makes us shadow wolves. We all have the same heart here. No. We are the same tribe, the same family, and that's what makes it important. And if you're not a shadow wolf, we got some free. We have recently had some very generous people give out some free memberships, so you might want to look into that too. But also, you can subscribe for free. Okay, we are very close to the 2,000 mark on our subscribers, and we're gonna have a big celebration when that happens. Okay, and we're very close. So let's look for some more subscribers. There got to be some more out there somewhere, definitely. And I see some of these shows around here with 500,000 subscribers. I'm like, come on now. There got to be some out there that wants to watch this one. But anyway, I do appreciate you all so very much, more than words can say. You know that, and I wanted to tell you that very soon I'm going to be dropping another for the members for the Shadow Wolves, another episode of the Shadow Hunters Club. Okay, I'm going to be dropping one very soon, so be watching for it. Okay, and we're going to have some very interesting stuff on that, and I might even sing on that too. You never know. But anyway, I'm going to be dropping that very soon, and we've got some other stuff coming out. We've got some other programs, so stay with us and enjoy our content and what we're going to put forth here for you, okay? Because we're all in this together, my dear friends, okay? What are we here for if we can't be here for each other, okay? Don't ever forget that. That's very important. And as William said earlier, faith over fear wins every time. And I want you all, every single one of you, to be winners, okay? Not losers, but winners in this game of life. Okay. But I appreciate you all so very much for going and walking to the edge with me tonight. And I thank you all so very much. And I hope that God will richly bless you all. And until we get back together again, which will be Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, who knows what? the old man's going to come up with next. Okay, you might want to stick around and find out. But I want to appreciate you all. I want to tell you all how much you mean to me. You definitely do. We'll get back together again. Until then, my dear friends, Godspeed to you all. Hold on to the light. Hold the line. Faith over fear. And until we meet together again, my friends, I will be looking for you somewhere out there in the shadow. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep. While I weep, oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or sing but a dream within a dream? You can support Hunting the Shadows at our Patreon, patreon.com, Hunting the Shadows Podcast. Also, our memberships are open on the Hunting the Shadows YouTube podcast channel. Please also support our Facebook groups, the American Institute for Paranormal Research, Southeastern Cryptid Investigations, Legend Trackers Society, Highway to High Strangeness, Monstrum Venators R.Us, Agency of the Arcane, and Hunting the Shadows Agency. You can contact Dennis Carroll at denniswcarroll.com.